All right, I think we're recording. It says so.
We are.
Fabulous. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that works for you.
Yeah, that works great.
All right. Okay. So last time we did this, we just went through the whole presentation first, and then we went to the time-ordered agenda and broke it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That sounds good. All right. Well, we start pretty much like last time with the welcome back, making sure they have all these pieces. If they don't, we'll have extras for them to, they can obviously have a new action planning template, but they could borrow a book. They just got to give it back.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. How do we disinfect that?
Oh, the books?
Yeah.
I guess just a wipe on the cover. Like
Yeah.
squeeze the wipe. Oh, geez. Okay. Okay. Yep. Yep. And you know what?
I was thinking about it, and I really do think that anything that was in the book is also on a slide. So like when it says, like look on page 21, I think the questions or, whatever it is on the slide. So I don't know. They might just have to take notes in a different way.
I was going to say maybe we need to provide just some extra paper because there are some stop and jot in your book type moments, I think, in this one.
Okay.
So, okay.
We just can be on the lookout as we move through it.
That works for me.
All right.
Okay, cool. All right, and access to the presentation, just like last time. Hopefully this will all go a little bit more smoothly now that they've done it once. Okay, so CCI, day 2, very cool. We can go back over our rules and all that good stuff again. I'm going to make this bigger so we can see our notes. Okay, these are the same housekeeping items as last time. Do you think we need to change or add anything?
I don't think so. It worked out pretty well.
Yeah, people were pretty well, they got it.
Yep.
Okay, then we jump into a like me kind of a thing.
It's one of my favorite memes.
I know. It is so fun. So, yeah, we can do whatever we want there with questions.
Perfect.
All right. Then we just do a quick, this is a summary of the pluses and the deltas from both of the day ones. So we probably just need to reference that in case somebody, I don't want anybody to think that we made something up that they didn't say in their session. Day one session, yep. So just kind of going over those things, and then we'll continue to provide the things that have worked well. And then our deltas with the RXs, which we've already gone over with everybody. Okay. So that part works. Okay, then review of the outcome. This is the same as day 1 because we're just finishing it now. I'm sorry, the purpose, but then the outcomes are a little bit the same. Sorry, I had to look. They're a little bit the same. Because again, it's just having a plan. They're just going to finish the plan today. So those pieces should all be similar. And then just kind of a reminder of this slide. And I feel like we could probably go pretty quickly over this one since they heard it last time.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. So then we kind of talk about where we've been. So just a quick review of steps 1 through 4. So part of their package that will be on their table is I did get file folders. And so it's the systems check 3, the CCI plan on a page, a PDSA template, then of course their action plan can go in there as well. So we thought we would just reference that plan on a page so that they have a reference for steps 1 through 4.
Okay.
But as the design team thought this would be a good idea just to tell them about it, but not go into it. We don't want to start talking about walkthroughs and all that, scaring people, but just as a reference. So far, so good?
Yep. So we're using the plan to review the first 4 steps.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. You got it.
All righty.
And then we do, this says Red Robin, but in my head, I think I was thinking more like just a whip around. Like what's the one thing that you remember from day 1? I'm just kind of seeing what things pop out. I think I'm going to switch that though, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So that'll work. A little bit of brainstorm, a little bit of share out. It says we can chart our responses. I don't know if we really need to. That was a note in there from before. My hope is that it'll be pretty fresh, but if we want to keep it fresh, we certainly can. Do you have a preference one way or another?
No.
Facilitator choice. I like it. Okay. So then we turn to our table groups. And so we'll have to assign those again like last time with the colored things. But the idea here is that they are going to use their action plans that they brought back to share their SMART goal with their table person or persons. We might need to model that again. I don't imagine we'll have to do too much of that, but we might.
I was wondering if we could include a little piece about like just maybe introduce yourself, what you teach, or who you teach. Because I think that was a delta. They didn't quite make the connection that their table partner was their like group person. So
Gotcha.
maybe if we did that, they could make that connection.
Love that. That's awesome. Yeah, let's do that. And this is the perfect spot for it.
Okay.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. This also, after they talk, it is an opportunity to address any questions they have.
Okay.
We can probably remind them of the issue bin as well, just so we don't get too tied down, but still a good chance to kind of get ourselves on a good solid foundation. Okay. Then we took, oops, this was one of Danielle's ideas before she left us, but to do some mindfulness instead of always doing we do have some big energetic stuff in here too. But this is just one. There are a couple different ones that I found. Bring it down is how to let go of worry and stress when it gets to be too much. So just thought it might be a good time to get ourselves in the room and let go of some things and get ready for some new things. But if you have a preference or want to switch it up or change it up, I'm good.
No, I think that's a great, it's a great way to, because there's, they're probably making the transition back like everyone else, and things are just starting to, probably all this stuff's going on in their head. So it's nice to just kind of put that stuff aside, get ready for the learning for the day. Cool.
Beautiful.
Love it.
All right, there we go. So we'll do a little bit of that. Okay. A little talk about Tara, our good friend Tara. Just that she's ready to move on from her long-term goal and be more planful with her cycles of improvement. And then these are obviously the common slides. We can reference the page numbers to the book. Just talking about these 3 indicators and then making connections to the HLPs and the educator standards. All right, on this slide, this is really where we're talking about what we mean by cycles of improvement and the length of those cycles. The book, I think, says 7 to 10 days. We usually say 1 to 2 weeks. I know some have to be a little bit longer, so in the past we've had to be pretty specific about that.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with stopping and seeing if it's working after 2 weeks, but keeping the plan the same, so
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, cool. This might be a good place too to remind them, like, if you're not sure, have a conversation with your facilitator, that kind of stuff too. Good call. Okay. So then we get into the example from Tara. So kind of having them, my thinking with you would just kind of have them read through it. Like, what are the things that you like? What things might make you pause a little bit? Particularly that student-friendly language piece tends to pop out pretty quickly. But just that idea that she's got some good stuff. She's got just a quick quiz. She knows what her measurement's going to be. This data can be informal, very formative, but we do need to remember understandable for kids as the key piece.
Do we ever make the connection back to like her plan contributes to the overall goal? Like, is that something that folks tend to have a hard time with?
We usually just repeat it like through all of our conversations over and over. And then on the
Okay.
PDSA template we offer, it starts with a long-term goal before getting to the PDSA.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Do you think it would be helpful though? Remember that slide we showed at the first one where it showed the different kinds of data like map data, benchmark data, and then cycles? That might be a good slide to throw in, right? Actually, like right here after their mindfulness minute to kind of bring them back to where we were and where we are.
Okay, yeah, kind of just bridging what we've learned last time to this time.
Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a good slide. And something you mentioned on the first day was the benchmarks or the screener check-ins, like the 3 to 4 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
You said those are usually on grade level.
Yes.
Would this be an opportunity to say, so these mini cycles will be on their level, or how will that? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. This is just
Good stuff.
Hang on, that's good note. Let me get that too. So, whoops. So long-term goal data is on grade level. PDSA cycles are on instructional. The informal. Cool. Perfect. All right, so I'll add that slide, which kind of guides us then into talking about Terra and the cycles, student-friendly language. This is a good slide. Whoops, sorry. That talks about fuzzy targets versus clear targets and just being very specific, comparing and contrasting. This slide came up from, and please just stop me if we need to go back.
Good.
This slide was in there from before, just kind of thinking about Bloom's taxonomy and thinking about the rigor. So when we make our plans, we're obviously looking, we want our scores to go up, but we also have to consider the rigor or the intensity of the task we're asking them to do. So anyway, I've tried to make some notes to help make that sound a little bit more fluid. Bloom's taxonomy is mentioned specifically in their book. We talk a lot about depth of knowledge, but there's some good examples that follow this that kind of talk about, like this would be a DOK1 level. This one could be a little bit more rigorous. This one could be a little bit more rigorous. So kind of just approaching the topic here and then showing some examples to model it was my thinking. Which leads us to some examples. This is elementary. It's got the target. It's got the measurement. Very easy data, DOK1. Kind of pretty standard. This one, obviously, teacher created data tools. So that's a good comment to make. Depending on the questions they ask, because I think this is a comprehension one, this could be a higher level DOK, depending on what she's asking them to remember or to do.
Yep.
Versus like this one, which is very specifically a higher DOK with like comparing. But again, has the measurement, has the assessment, bit of a higher DOK, just things to model and be aware of. Cool.
Yep.
This one talks about that you can use a pre-made template if you want to, which we have one to offer them. And then it has the data like right next to it, so that's kind of a good connection to make. We can also mention the importance of saving your PDSAs one after the next. Pretty basic. I kind of figure at this point we can start saying, all right, take a look. Tell us the parts that you like. Does it have, is it understandable? Is it in student-friendly language? Does it have the measurement? Does it have an assessment tool? Which this one does. Whereas this one does not. Like it has pieces of it. It's very student friendly, but there's no date attached to it. So we don't know like when they're expected to know this. So these might be some pieces to start pointing out. What questions do you have?
Nothing. I just was looking at that picture and thinking, wow, they laminated that plan. And how better would it have been if it would have just been authentic,
Oh,
an
yeah.
authentic, like,
That
are
might
you
be
going to
something.
do that every year? Like, is every kid going to, like, I don't know. It's just, how do you make it flexible so that it can happen year to year?
That might be a good comment to make because as we go down some of the examples, especially I think when we get to some of the examples, I have to find them here. So like there's like an older version, but here we start to get like to the post-it notes or the data starts to get kind of messy. So we start to point that out. So that might not be a bad comment to make.
And it could be that there's the other piece is that the student will maintain or increase by 1 point on the skill of, and there's Velcro behind there, and they're moving them. So I don't. So there's that, and yet how do you differentiate the rigor expectation? So
Right.
I can get on board with swapping out things, but
Right. Nope. I'm with you. I think I like the thought of showing them some examples of how to use the visuals, how to make it student friendly, and yet it's not quite perfect. So what are, and that might be a good discussion that just like we're having, our participants might say that as well. Like, how could we make this better?
cool.
Because I wondered, and I didn't see a lot of feedback on it, but I wondered as we were training on days 1 and 2 and going through the examples, I think everyone was looking and we did ask some questions, but it was also like a good chunk of time for them to kind of sit back and listen. And I was kind of looking for more ways to engage them in some of those examples. So it might lend itself to a good opportunity. Okay. So just hitting on some of our older secondary folks, just this idea we've got the quizzes. This is nicely typed out, doesn't have to be. It can be handwritten, it can be messy. Just like this one, like the long-term goal or semester goal is typed out. But like the weeks change, the dates change. This is a pretty broad goal, so that one didn't change as much. But the idea is we try to make this an easy process.
Yeah, that might be a good opportunity to point out that this teacher anticipates that this unit or this plan might take more than one cycle of learning, and yet they're going to check in on 217 to see if they need to change anything before the unit's over, or, something like that. Like the plan, you don't have to finish the unit for the plan to be done.
Exactly, and you probably shouldn't, because units take usually a long time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Mary, would it be worth it to ask them, like at this point or even the slide before, to ask them to like take out their CCI on a page and say, and because those are really some criteria they could use to I don't know. I need to
like
pull
to
up
reference it.
Yes,
Like to reference it as they're looking. Oh, that's a good
yeah.
idea.
So like, does it do this? Does it do that? I don't know. I can't. Let me pull that up.
That's a great idea.
That would give them a third point to look at.
That's a great idea because they'll have the tool sitting right there.
Is proficiency included? It clearly leads to the achievement of the class goal. They share it's sort of, I guess, sort of, but it could be at least a third point to look at.
Well, and I think it's smart for them to start thinking in those terms because that's how facilitators and ACs are going to think of it too.
Yeah.
So maybe we ask them to pull it out up here with this slide since we knew that there was some.
And they can even take notes on that if,
Mhm.
if they wanted to, like put kid-friendly language in there, just reminders for themselves as we move through it.
Love it. Okay, got it. All right, so we had the secondary example. We had one that adds the post-it notes. Again, like what do we like? What do we need? This one has a good time frame and a measure, but it doesn't say anything about the actual student growth. Like how much? Like close, but not quite. This one I kept in because this is highlighted, and I was wondering if, like, so from our participants, what does it lead us to believe? So this might be a group who's maybe ready to try something on grade level, but just because we've made that point about it being on their instructional level, I say either we keep it and point that out, or we don't use this at all. Do you have any feelings one way or another?
Not particularly. I mean, my only wondering would be if they've highlighted it here, does it mean that previous plans, like maybe it's something they're working up to? If we were to check previous plans, maybe it said like at instructional level. And so they've gotten that down and now they're ready for the next step or something like that. I don't know.
Right. I left it in thinking that our participants might go that route too. Like, oh, they had to have done some things to get here, but we can get here. We should get here, ideally. So we can kind of feel the group. This one again, just keep your plans. It's like the main name of the game, keep your plans.
Yep.
Okay. So this next slide is a conversation that the design team had. This is not usually something that I have seen in the presentation before, but it's certainly something that is worth mentioning. And they kind of had several slides on the left here that pertain to this information.
Yeah.
So just this idea of when we're looking at how to track progress, for many of our students, it's looking at academics, it's looking at percentages and grades, but it doesn't have to. It could be your level of independence and kind of having a good, solid idea of what that might look like and who this would be appropriate for. Our team kind of felt like we didn't want to get too into the weeds. We wanted to bring it to their attention, have a good, solid discussion, and offer resources. So we ended up putting all these things. It gets into measurement tools and rubrics, things like that. Great, fabulous tools. But kind of having the discussion and showing it and just saying, hey, if you want more tools for this, you can go to this link and you'll see, and just kind of showing them quickly, but not getting too deep just yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right, so then that would bring us to our training example. This is just the same visual we used on day one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all printed out and ready to go. We'll have it all set up on the wall to just flip the page over. I left it out. I left the typing on the screen just because I realized people can't see the boards if they're on the other side of the room very well. So like for us for the day, our learning targets would be to identify tools for steps 5 and 6 and develop a plan to how to implement the plan and the do, because clearly they cannot do their own study act until they do the plan and do. This refers to an activity that is in the presentation, and then the action plan at the end. Cool?
Yep.
All right, so they do that. This was an opportunity that I thought could just be like a whole group discussion. What are ways that you could clearly communicate and establish a plan for your learning cycle with students and staff? They can kind of have a couple seconds to review it in their book, and then just kind of calling out and opening it up. We don't have really huge groups at this point.
Okay.
That was my thinking there, which would then lead them into their action planning time. This looks like it was a note from last time. The teacher shared their table. We don't typically have them do that. I wasn't necessarily planning on it. It pretty much leads into a break. So I was okay to leave that one out because they're going to have more time later where they can collaborate.
Okay. That works.
Perfect. Okay, action plan. Time for like a formal, 10-minute break. And they go do what they do. And when they come back, we hop into step 6, which is super fun. It's all the strategies. So same, I think in presentation mode, all these things fly in. I'm not really sure. But then just talking about each of these 3 pieces. Just that idea of pointing out really what is a high yield instructional strategy versus the activity.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course our connections. And this is just a really nice visual, I think, of like the strategy is the big picture. The activities obviously support it. Knowing that we have the Teach Like a Champion, we have Hattie. The book talks quite a bit about Marzano, and they're going to play around with it in the activities, but I am wondering now that I look at this, if we should add the link to the DESI connections to Marzano, just because otherwise they won't have it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that. We kind of just talk it through, but they're going to play with it in a minute. That's why it's 56. Okay. So in their book on these pages, 37 to 39, are all of the Marzano strategies. And then they have, like the book outlines really clearly what the supporting activities could be to support each of those big picture strategies. So this is a good chance for them to just kind of look, read, dive in for a little bit. And then they get to do this. So the idea here, and to be honest, we were looking at it, we couldn't do a think, pair, share, which was the original plan, but we did with them to get up and move. So we picked non-linguistic representation through kinesthetic activity. So they've already read the pages. So think about if you've used one of these strategies, and then we're going to share how the strategy has worked in the classroom. So they're going to read the pages. We're going to play, if this makes sense, a version of Simon Says, but really it's Marzano Says. So we'll say like stand up if you've done a non-linguistic representation, and we're going to go fast. People stand up, sit down, we'll kind of run through the list, and then we'll have a discussion. So a lot of you stood up when we talked about this. Tell us how that worked. Just a little game of whack-a-mole kind of thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah, this will be fun.
You're like, oh, Mr. Steckland.
He was like the Simon Says champ.
I know. You'd be on your game.
Yeah, you did.
All right. See, our old teacher is still shining through. Okay. Oh, so then we kind of make that idea of after they share a bunch of their activities, as relates to the strategies, we bring it back to the idea of having a strategy bank and how the bank can support the do when it comes time to choosing the right strategy. Then it's a little table teamwork where they go back to those same pages that they've already played with a little bit. They actually come to an agreement on one skill that they are working on with their their students in their classroom. They pick a strategy and then come up with some supporting activities. And they can actually write this in their book if they want to. So just as a time to put some action into practice. And then these links fly in kind of like after they do the activity and we're summarizing it. We can have these links fly in just to say, hey, there are additional resources. We've learned a lot about Marzano, but you can always go to these ones as well. Right. So far, so good?
So far, so good.
All righty. So before we look at some examples, oh yeah, we have to look at the importance of getting staff and student input when we're picking our strategies. So we're going to give them like 2 minutes to read the page. Think about something that would look for you, and then the prompt for them is as we're looking through examples, to look through that lens of how would I get my students and my paras involved in something like one of these examples. All right. You good?
Alrighty.
So it starts off with just like the basic strategy bank and having them just out posted. It can be cute, it can just be handwritten, doesn't matter. This one's out and it has some things pointed out so that we all know exactly what they're doing. This one we kept to show the idea of you might have a strategy bank near your PDSA because you can, like you said, like pull Velcro or whatever and kind of know what works and what doesn't and stick it and move it around.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, whoops, these are just examples now of how you choose specific strategies for each of your targets. And you're just going to pick a few. So I would really even say just one or two for a shorter time frame. Not 102. Something like that. This is just the idea that it can be written out. It doesn't have to be fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, getting into the whole teacher will, students will. So clearly defining roles and responsibilities. And then kind of doing that plug for the sooner we can start doing this, even at a younger age, the more people are going to get used to having to accept accountability for their work. Owning their learning, all that good stuff. This was a cool example because they noted what paras would do in addition to teachers and students. Just another one with some cues. Just again, typed out. This was that pre-made template. If people choose to use it, we can continue to point out the difference between handwriting it and typing it. Doesn't have to be pretty. This might be a good example of like what do we like? If you had a choice, what would you change? Like there's a lot of good stuff here, but there's a lot of stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
So that idea of making it student friendly, understandable, relatable, zero questions kind of a thing. So far, so good? You good?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So then on page, back to their book. This is a quick table partner. You can jot down your ideas, be ready to share with the group. So they can use their whiteboards if they want, just like before. And then after their table talk, we could do like a 2 to 3 responses. Although we have low numbers, so that might be every group, but who knows? That's okay. That would lead us into our do for our day. So everything from we changed round robin to whip around. Oh, I'm gonna have to change that on the printed ones. Oh, I'm just gonna scratch it out. Then we'll show them it doesn't have to be pretty.
There you
On
go.
the pre-made templates. All right. So all of those pieces we can kind of model like before. I'm trying to fix that nicely. Then the action plan, like always. And now we get to have more fun. This is like a legit battle. Like this is a fun one. You play against, I actually had to watch it because I wasn't sure who they played against. You play against the instructor on the screen. And then you can win, lose, or tie. And that will show you your exercise.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it's kind of fun. Gets people up.
These are great.
They are. Somebody had a lot of fun making this stuff. Okay. And that gets us into step 7. And after 7 is lunch.
Okay.
Okay, so pretty common. Again, just going over the introductory pieces. Kind of pointing out that this is like weekly data. So this is going to be fast moving, formative, good stuff. Doesn't have to be pretty. We have our plan at the top, and then we're just recording the data however it makes sense. So bar graphs, there's a line graph. bar chart. So this one was cool because it talks about, these are not for students. These are for different classes. So they keep asking, like, what's this going to look like down the line? It could look something like this down the line. Even though right now we're still focusing on the one group. Oh, the Suzuki strings class just keeps popping up. So I just kept it in to keep some consistency. So she's still tracking data. This one was cool because it just kind of pointed out this idea of plus delta as a little precursor. So step 7 is a 2-parter. And I don't know if I said that when we introduced it. And I feel like we have to make this super clear every time. Back, like the minute we start talking about step 7, is it's the data and the plus delta. Otherwise, we start to see the plus delta and the act and getting in all sorts of crazy places. So 2-parter. So data first, plus delta comes next. So this is kind of a natural little connection. Okay, so then once we kind of go through the data piece, they get back into their book, page 46. And it says, identify other ways that your students could show what they know and can do for a specific learning target. So I was going to remind them back from our Jamboard from day 1, like when we said, how do you get your kids engaged in the learning process? And they had like all these ideas up there. I was going to give them 1 minute to look at the thoughts on 46, 90 seconds to get to their whiteboard, write down as many ideas as they can, and then do a whiteboard write-off with their, like a contest, basically. Just trying to make it fun. Then they share and discuss. And I thought of you to celebrate with a cheer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Love it.
Okay. If you have other thoughts, though, please throw them in. Just trying to spice it up. Okay, so then we've kind of talked about the data part. This really gets us into talking about the plus delta and the data questions. So we're going back to the target and the assessments, like you said before. Again, making the connection between short-term and long-term goals.
Mm-hmm.
Good targets lead to good assessments. Appropriate for the length of the cycle. Focus to the point, easily scored. Which leads into these data questions. So now that you have the data, what do you do with it, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about the purpose of the questions. And we usually have to point things out like know your audience. So little kids aren't going to really know what any of these words mean. So we're going to have to teach them. We can change the verbiage. You might have to do some modeling here. Also great questions for data teams, that kind of thing.
Yep.
This teacher chose to put it out in her classroom. Just point they don't have to do that, but it could be helpful. So just an offering. But those questions lead into properly planning for your plus deltas. So things that worked really well, opportunities to do better, or opportunities for improvement. Doesn't have to be pretty. Teachers can write it, kids can write it. Use their language. There's a technological example. We can kind of talk about how we offer our plus deltas at lunch, like we did it on the wall. We also have the Padlet or like a Google Doc. We just used a Google Doc. We always point out this kid right here because he's funny. It makes everyone laugh.
So, question about the anonymous piece.
Sorry.
Do we promote anonymous plus deltaing?
Not necessarily. I wouldn't say one way or the other. My thought was that it was kind of teacher choice.
Okay.
Like knowing the students. If it was, typically it's just a conversation with kids and they just talk about it. But doing it electronically allows for it to be anonymous if that's a concern in the classroom. Gotcha. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something we need to more specifically state?
No, I just want to be consistent. with that? Whatever
Gotcha.
message.
Nope, definitely a good question. That might be worth, because the idea is we do want it to be a conversation. So whether the data is done anonymously, the conversation still needs to happen. So that's actually a really key point to make, and this would be a good place to put it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Sorry. That's a great comment to make because you don't want it to slip away. Whoops, where am I? So I did that one. Oh, there we go. Oh, so I left this one in because this study talks a lot about skills. So like we didn't get this skill, we need to work on these skills. Whereas this study, the plus and the delta, has a little bit more about the strategies themselves, like the prompting hierarchy and feedback. So it could be about either or and all, was my thinking, or our thinking. Oops. Let's see, this just pointed out, it was just being more specific about where they were on that particular day. If you feel like we're getting into too many examples, please say so, because there are quite a few. Like, I don't know if we really need this one, but it's fine. These really started to tie in this idea of engagement, which I did think was a powerful message for, particularly for our students who don't have the language, usually or ability to speak on their own. So this is where you can kind of give them a choice. So this is what I think about, and then you put the topic, which could be your plan. And then they would give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or if it was awful or whatever it might be. But it's a way to get their voice into the mix. So that's how we kept that one. This one pulled the class. Oh, so she took the class data and she kind of just put it as a bar graph. Like this one person loved it, but 3 people not so much. So this in combination with her data that says whether it worked or not, like just because they didn't like it, if it worked, you might have to do it again. But they would use a combination of the two to make a determination on what step you would do next. Does this make sense or is it too complicated?
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I assume the red is bad and the green is good.
Over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a smile, like a really big smile, a little smile, like a straight face and a angry face or something.
And those little things are the kids' names. So they're like voting. I got it. Now I get it. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. I probably do a better job explaining it to other people.
I wish I'll keep my comments to myself. I wish that it wouldn't be so leading in the color of those kids. Like,
oh,
why do the black kids have to be sad? Just saying.
oh, that's true. Oh, I didn't even notice it. That is such a good lens to look through, though. I wonder if we could switch it around, make our own. My brain did not even go there, but maybe it needs to.
Yeah, and yet those are the little subliminal messages we send kids all the time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and not just kids. I mean, like how would the adults in the room interpret some of that? You know what I'm saying? Like clearly, it
Parents,
does.
other teachers.
You know what? That's a really powerful message to send right here. Might be something to, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a good opportunity to point it out and potentially be a learning opportunity.
And I would bet this teacher was like, oh, I'm just going to get, it's like a gradient. If you look, like, it just like gets noticeably
Are
darker
they
as you
debunking
go.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
Um,
I hope that's not board maker. I hope there are Black kids that are smiling in board maker.
I'm fairly certain that there are. Wow. I am
Yeah.
so glad you said that. What a learning opportunity to bring up here. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right. So from that, we would lead into back to the book, page 48. In what ways could you all, as a team, study the effects of teaching and learning on the cycle? And this would just be a minute for them to share out what their table rate. So it could be a person of two. We've never had groups of more than 3, but just a chance for each one to say something.
Cool.
And then like a minute to share what a team member thought with the larger group. So this was just pointing it back out. So this is what we have considered for our training, and are these helping? Just kind of thinking about it, drawing it to their attention that that's something that we are going to look at, and we're going to look at it right here on the next activity. One of our learning targets was for them to rate their readiness to apply their tools to implement steps 5 and 6. So if you click on the picture, it will take you to this little activity. And they're just going to vote. They're just going to grab and vote. We're hoping that they're over here, but you never know. And that's going to be our data. So over lunch, we need to print this so that we can post it on our wall as live data.
Cool.
Cool?
Yep.
Awesome. Because once they do that, the action plan, we do our plus delta before lunch, just like we did it before. So they can use the chart on the door, or they can go to a different Google Doc and give us our info. And then they go to lunch for an hour.
Cool.
I do want to respect your time. I know we've been talking for an hour. Do you have a little bit longer?
I think so. Let me check. Yes.
You're good?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so lunch, see you in an hour. Welcome back video. Have you seen this one before?
I feel like I have, but it's not. They look familiar.
They're a good crew. So this is all about collaborating with families, with the community, with doing what we got to do what's best for kids. So a nice touching story.
Alrighty.
About a drummer, very cool. All right, we will add our pluses from their feedback and our deltas with our X's, which we'll do over lunch. We need to print these also as part of our study. So we'll do all of that over lunch. So then we actually take a break because Adrienne England is coming to share some information, on family engagement, which is cool. So I've already sent her the presentation. She's planning on coming from about 12:30 to 1 is what we have blocked out. And, if our time ordered agendas are correct, which last time we were like 10 minutes off, but it was fine. We should be coming back from lunch around 12 or 12:10. So it should be a pretty natural flow. I'm not entirely sure what she's presenting. I don't know if she's using these slides or something different. But I sent this to her and I just said, you know what, change it, do whatever you got to do. So I'm not really sure. But this is all her up until about here. So when they come back to us, we kind of switch back. I envisioned it about at this slide right here. And just doing a quick brain break. They haven't been back from lunch all that long. So I was just going to do like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, very short, just a good stretch it out, move it along kind of thing. And then we move into step 8. So the act step, whoops, what are we going to do differently? Make our connections.
Mary,
Throwing, yeah.
Sorry, can I
Nope.
just ask, is there a reason why she's coming when she's coming? Like, is there a transition, or like, is it a continuation of step 7, or is it just like, here's how to engage families in the process?
It's more, from what I understand, and I'll be very honest in that I don't know exactly what she's presenting, only that she has always been a presence at the SSD schools when they do it. And clearly they tie this to the process. My hunch is that it's somewhat connected to this idea of, as we're teaching our students, obviously we're teaching them the skills we want them to learn, but we're also teaching them to be learners. And that cannot just happen in the classroom. That's a community, it's a family, it's a whole team process. So that's how I would intended to preface it
Okay.
in
Okay.
ways to pull our families in.
Speaking to the whole process,
Mhm.
not just the do.
Oh, correct. Yeah. The whole shebang.
Okay.
The whole Good question. But in all of that being, I don't think there's anything that she could present that would not tie into that.
Sure.
So I just don't know the specifics of what it's going to be. She did say she'll try to get there a few minutes early to get a feel for the group and kind of what the content is so she can make connections. And I said, well, they'll be at lunch, not too long before. So, but come whenever you want. And that's great. So hopefully we'll see her over lunch a little bit. All right. Good question. So thank you. So there's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here's the introduction, the connections. We kind of tie it back in here, the importance of family connections as we work through the process of learning. And the question is, so like, what are we going to do? We have the data, we know what's working, what's not working, but what do we do about it?
Mm-hmm.
So here's just a sample. This one dives into samples pretty quickly. So either we improved or we didn't, and here are some things we need to work on. We make the connections that the deltas really, that comes clear in just a second, but so there's like a sample. Here's a sample again, like we improved, we didn't, we're going to do these things differently. This is kind of just a pretty cut and dry component. This one over here, this one's going to need some explaining. It is hard to see, but I liked it in the fact that it's one of the few examples we have for students who may need this type of support. But this helps make the connection. So over here, it says, let's change. So like, this is what we did. Let's change this. So it's a direct connection to the plus delta conversation from the study. So now we have to make a change. What's that change going to be? And then this slide helps connect the change that we talk about in the ACT to the next plan and the next set of strategies. So it kind of brings the cycle full circle. It refers to, they need to look in their book on page 51 first. They review that. The data is in the book, but we can kind of summarize. In the story, 30% of the class did not meet the target. So the data led them to this. Okay. Oh, so on page 52, when they look at some additional examples with the table partner, they reference the ACT as an RX. And that's just some terminology that gets flipped quite a bit. It all means the same thing, but we might need to point that out. And that they have a choice in the format that works best for their classroom. So there's a couple of examples on that page 52 that they can look at and kind of make some decisions about. And with their partner, what might you add or edit to better meet the needs of your students? So that's what they're talking about for a couple minutes. Okay. So this is the example, like our example from the training. And we're going to have all of our templates kind of printed out from before lunch. So we'll have our data, we'll have our plus delta up there. And then I have a blank ACT template in the box here that'll just be on the wall. And it's in a page protector. It's obviously blank because we don't know, but we'll use our data and then we'll actively say either we met the goal or we made progress toward the goal. And we'll talk about what things we would do differently.
Okay.
And then they action plan. And then they take a break. Okay. So that, at this point, they've gone through all 8 steps. We've made a lot of connections. So when they get back from break, this is just like today, this has been the focus. The PDSA has been the focus. That idea of engaging students and staff in those frequent checks. This is just like a setup. So like as you get back to your classroom, this might be something to consider in terms of a setup. It's very direct. You have your data present, but just a reminder that it's not the whole system. This is just a part of your system, which leads into these other ones where you'll see like the mission statement and the long-term goals are all at the top. And that drives the PDSA around the data. This is another example. The mission, the long-term goal is right here, but you still have your PDSA that's supported. So just the idea that it's a whole process, not just the PDSA. Okay. So this is kind of a throwback to day 1. Like remember when we did this Venn diagram, we talked about the importance of these 3 components to get to high student achievement. Now they actually have all the information they need to start this out, and it's their job to get it going. Just that reminder of who can be their support throughout the process. Okay, then we start to talk about what to expect next. We'll talk about the walkthroughs, point out that they're not evaluative, just to see what's working well, answer questions. We can kind of refer back to that plan on a page one more time so they know exactly what, now they know what it's being used for. And then after the walkthroughs happen, they come back for TSP. And you get this next lovely book. Okay, so at this point, we're getting very close to their larger chunk of action planning time. So these are just some resources. If they need to get to these, pages quickly, there you go. Just some different templates and things like that. All the quality tools, they have the page numbers there. We created this slide. So if you're just looking for specific PDSA, photo galleries, a strategy bank photo gallery, and this is a template that we could go to. It'll force them to make a copy, long-term goal, and the PDSA around it. We added our sites for on-demand learning if they need to go deeper. And then we included your virtual CCI board that you started. And then references to their plan, their book, facilitators, and their plan on a page. Okay. And they do their action planning time. I think we budgeted about 30 minutes for this. So the EPSs are here just like before. They offered a lot of support during the smaller action planning times, during a lot of the examples that we would offer. So they are obviously of support here as well. And then after their 30 minutes, they get to share their whole completed plan with their table partner, just to kind of bring it all together and increase that ownership. And we're almost done, but we're not quite done. Okay, so they're getting ready to go to have like a little 5-minute chill, brain break, check your email thing. I'm thinking that we need to get their post data on those consensograms. So I was going to instruct them to socially distancedly do that over their break. So they'll get blue dots this time on both of those consensograms. They'll take their break or do it during break. And then we need to reflect on the data when they come back from break. And this ties back to the long-term goal that we set at the beginning of the year. So once we make that connection, we then give them the systems check 3, everyone's favorite tool. So We can talk about what it is, how they're going to use it. I tried to outline all the steps and how it's going to be used. So it's the systems check 3. Oh, where we are, where we're going to go. Kind of making them feel okay that when they look at it, it's all right if they don't know what it's talking about. In some of the areas, that's okay. This is really just getting a baseline. Do these make sense? Do we need to, are these directions okay? Put your name, answer it honestly, keep it safe. We're going to collect their scores during that walkthrough conversation, but they're not going to go into talent ed, not evaluative, it's just for us and for them. And that they'll be reevaluating themselves once a year from here on out.
Yeah, I wonder, two things are coming up for this. One is, are we going to talk through each of the sections like they recommend? Or are we just truly just giving it to them as a baseline? So that's one thing that was curious about. And the other, again, might we make a connection to, we don't have to use the slide, but could we make a connection to that assessment slide with the little red bars? Like, so our systems check is our little red bars, basically. Is that, so we want to see as you progress through, you know, your time with us, are you getting better?
Well, that's a great connection to make. Yes, I think we should do that. And then in terms of, do we walk them through the systems check? We certainly can. What it talks about is really just so the indicators, and then they rate themselves obviously as where they fall, not yet progressing, proficient, or advanced. Since it is a true baseline, I hesitate to get too deep.
Okay.
Because I'm hoping for this to be some pretty raw data, but it might be helpful to at least talk about these categories.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So we'll just go over the categories and then kind of give them some time to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought there was a different slide about this. Nope, not that one. Okay. I thought there was another slide, but that's okay. So we will review each indicator and connect this data back to more or less like our benchmarks, our yearly benchmark data.
Yep. I wish we could make connections back to that dinner plate.
Oh, the linkage diagram?
Yeah, but with the better words.
With
but
the better words.
You know, the CCI words.
Yeah, no, I know.
But we can just talk through that. Okay, all right.
I mean, we could try to put like a little graphic right here.
Yeah, I think
like kind of point to it.
graphic at the top, like in one of the top slides, we probably could pull it down there also.
Okay, I'll look for it. Hold on. What slide number is this? 159? Got it. Okay, I'm on it. Okay, so we can make those connections as well. Great suggestions, thank you, ma'am. Okay, and then they get a chunk of time to complete this, and they take it with them. So that's a bit of a change because we don't collect this. They take it with them.
Okay.
Then basically we just remind them of their expectations. So 1 through 8, one subject area, course or class. They can expect a walkthrough from their facilitator using the plan on a page doc. Make sure they're registered for TSP, days 1 and 2, and then come on back. And then just a reminder of their outcomes for the day, for the today and the last day, really. Before, we set them to do their kick-up learning evaluation, which is accurate for Monday.
Okay.
And then the kick-up code.
All righty.
And that's all she wrote. So do you have any questions? Oh, yeah, I know we need to look at the time ordered agenda really quick and divvy out who's doing what.
No questions.
You sound like I'm interviewing you. You're like, no questions, no comment, no questions. All right. Do you want to run this similar to how we did it last time, or do you want to do it opposite of how we did it last time?
You mean like just taking a chunk?
Yeah, like last time, I think I did the introductions, you led the inclusion activity. Like, do you want to still do the inclusion activity, or do you want to start the day off today?
I can, whatever. I think we should just chunk it. So like, you take a chunk, I take a chunk.
It was really just that first activity section where we kind of went back and forth. Then we just took chunks.
That's true. Doesn't matter.
Well, let's see. How about you want to start it today?
Sure. Yeah.
I'll do that. Do you feel okay with plus delta-ing? Like going over their plus deltas?
Oh, yes, I can.
Cool. And perfect. Can you want to just take that into our purpose for the day? Because it kind of flows.
Yep.
And then I can lead the round robin and we can field the questions.
Yep.
Cool. And I can do the mindfulness thing.
Yep.
All right. Do you want to dive into step 5 then? The plan part? And I can do step 6. And then you want step 7?
You know it.
Fabulous. I can bring them back after lunch.
Okay.
And I can do step 8 since you did 7. And that puts you at doing the action planning pieces, like tying it all together and doing the action plan.
Yep.
Are you cool to send them off to the break and doing the consensogram?
Yep.
Cool. And then I can review the data and lead the systems check. Then we'll just wrap it up together.
Alrighty.
Awesome. Thank you, Mia. I'm going to print this out. Do you want me to print the agenda or anything while I'm printing? You want a copy?
If you want to print a copy of it, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Do you need the presentation or you do it a special way?
No, I got it.
You're good. Okay. Cool. Alrighty. I will
Thanks for your time, Mary.
Drop it off. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.